Hey everybody, welcome to the videos for my core plays for week 13 of the NFL season over on Draftkings, my favorite video that I post each and every single week. If you want to check out my lineup building video that I kind of focus on cash game roster construction, I did post that earlier on this morning, so I'll try to link that in the description below, or I'll put it somewhere on the screen right now so you can click it and watch it if you want to. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. And if we hit 7,000 subscribers this weekend, I'll just say thank you in advance. I do appreciate each and every single one of you that does take the time to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. That's obviously going to help me out as well. Also hit the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. You can support the channel down below if you want to follow me over on social media. Handles in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. I think I got all the plugs out of the way, so without further ado, let's get into this week's Core Plays video. Alright, leading us off with core play number 1. I feel like he's done this quite a few times this season, but it makes sense because he's having an absolutely fantastic year. But it's a very pricey Dalvin Cook at a massive price tag of $9,500. Yes, I know he is super expensive, and yes, I also know he busted last week a high ownership, only at around 11 fantasy points, but there were several factors that was working against Dalvin Cook in that game. It's not something I can really expect to happen once again. There was 2 defensive touchdowns scored from the Carolina Panthers, which kind of flips the game script because we were fully expecting the Minnesota Vikings to be winning in that game and just pounding the rock with Dalvin Cook in the second half or fourth quarter to end the game. That was not the case, and one of those fumbles that got returned for a touchdown was from Dalvin Cook, and he got injured on that play, ended up coming back in, but he was in the medical tent for a little bit, ended up coming back in after he was jogging on the sideline, and really just didn't get anything going. He was kind of inefficient that day. I believe he had 18 carries for around 60 yards. Not really what's been the case this season, but I'm fully expecting him to bounce back here in a big way versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you had any concerns that he's not going to be fully healthy this week or getting a full workload, that should be completely thrown out the window considering the fact that he practiced fully on Friday. And the added bonus is that Alexander Mattison just got rolled out about 30 minutes or an hour ago. I'm recording this at around 5 p.m. Eastern, but Alexander Mattison has been rolled out with an illness. So if you had any concerns about a Dalvin Cook workload, that should be completely thrown out the window with Alexander Mattison being out, the main backup running back. So it's going to be the Dalvin Cook show here for the most part. And he should be able to absolutely crush versus a pretty poor Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And the Minnesota Vikings, they have a 31-point implied team total this week, which is the highest on the entire slate. They're 10-point favorites at home. And the numbers for Dalvin Cook are absolutely insane this year. Over 110 rushing yards per game, 22 carries, about 1.5 rushing touchdowns, over 5 yards per carry. Also involved in the passing game as well, which kind of is why I like him over Derrick Henry this week. And it's also a little bit of a softer matchup, but he's got around a 12.5% target share compared to Derrick Henry's 8% target share. In the past few weeks, I believe he has about 15 targets combined. And the Jaguars are 26th DVOA versus the run, allowing the 5th most points per game to the position, over 100 yards, close to a rushing touchdown per game, and close to 6 catches per game as well. So Dalvin Cook, he pretty much checks each and every single box for me. And I know he's very pricey at $9,500. That's almost $10,000, but there's a lot of value on the slate to make it work, and it's really not that hard to fit him in. So Dalvin Cook, he is core play number 1 for me on this slate. Alright, moving on to our second core play of this video. It's our first wide receiver we're going to talk about, and it's the new wide receiver 1 in Houston. Brandon Cooks at only $5,600. We're getting a very nice price tag on him, and this is mainly just due to Will Fuller being suspended for the rest of the season, because Will Fuller, the wide receiver 1 in that offense. Now, he actually had a lower target share than Brandon Cooks this year, but overall, he was the wide receiver 1 in this offense, about 80 receiving yards per game, close to 7 targets, over a 21% target share, and about a 30% market share of the team's air yards. You got to completely take that out of this offense, and Brandon Cooks is the new wide receiver 1 for Deshaun Watson, and the wide receiver 1 for Deshaun Watson is usually a pretty lucrative position to be in. I know the matchup versus Indianapolis isn't the greatest in the world. They've had a pretty tough defense this season. They're 6th DVOA versus the pass, allowing the 6th fewest points per game to the position, but Brandon Cooks actually has a pretty nice wide receiver versus cornerback matchup advantage this week per PFF, one of the biggest of the entire week, and I would not be surprised if he sees close to a 30% target share in this game, because on the season, Brandon Cooks is sitting at around a 22% target share and close to 7 targets per game. So if you take Will Fuller out of the equation, also Randall Cobb's going to be out as well. I would not be surprised if Cooks sees around 10 to 15 targets in this game and about a 30% target share, and I'd be very shocked if he doesn't pay off his $5,600 price tag. I know the matchup isn't great, but he's a talented wide receiver. And again, the volume's going to be there. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the game throwing the football, and we have over a 50-point total in this game. So points should be scored, and I'm really in on Brandon Cooks here. He's in a really soft price tag. He fits in excellently, really nicely in your lineup as a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, and I think he's one of the best plays in the entire slate. I would not be surprised if ownership reflects that as well. Alright, moving on to core play number 3. It's an ugly one, but it's David Montgomery at $5,500. I know it's definitely not a sexy pick here, but it's a fantastic matchup. The price is nice. He's coming off his best game of the year, around 30 Draftkings points. And I don't think he's going to do that exactly again, but the volume is going to be there. And like I mentioned, the matchup is pristine versus Detroit. They're giving up the most points per game to the position at 33.8 points per game, over 115 rushing yards, and over a rushing touchdown per game. And they're 23rd DVA versus the run. And the Bears are 3-point favorites at home. The Lions are going to be without DeAndre Swift and Kenny Galladay once again. So I feel like the Bears could be playing from a lead here unless Mitch Trubisky gets them in trouble, which could certainly be the case. But we should see around 20 touches, if not more, from David Montgomery. And I think he can get us close to 100 total yards. He's going to get targets as well. He's pretty much the only running back on this offense that's going to touch the ball, especially since Derrick Cohen's been out. It's been the absolute, just complete David Montgomery show here. Maybe just a mix of a couple of other running backs, but they won't be much of a factor. So Montgomery at $5,500. I'm definitely in on him this week. Now, I think his ownership is going to be not a lot lower, but definitely a bit lower than it was going to be early on in the week with the news that Devontae Booker is going to be the new starting running back for the Los Angeles, or I'm sorry, not the Los Angeles Raiders, for the Las Vegas Raiders, since Josh Jacobs is going to be out and he's got a good matchup versus the New York Jets. So if you really don't like David Montgomery, you could always pivot to Devontae Booker here at the same exact price tag. I personally think you can play both. You'll see that in my lineup building video if you want to check that out. But personally, 1v1, I do prefer Montgomery just because I like the matchup a bit more, and he should be able to have a pretty decent game on the ground versus Detroit. I know Duke Johnson kind of did most of his damage through the air in the last game, but he still put up a respectable game versus the Detroit Lions last week on Thanksgiving, and I feel like David Montgomery can do something similar this week versus them. Alright, moving on to core play number 4/4.5. I'm cheating a bit here, but it's really hard to pick between these two guys this week. So I listed them both. Cooper Kupp at $6,100 and Robert Woods at $5,900. Now I know in the comment section I'm going to get asked if I prefer Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp. I'm going to tell you Robert Woods right now. He is my preferred option over Cooper Kupp just because he's a little bit cheaper, and I feel like they're the same exact play each and every single week. So in my opinion, why not take the cheaper option, and then he might be able to, going with Robert Woods over Cooper Kupp might be able to get you that quarterback you want, running back, wide receiver 3, tight end, defense, whatever it is. Now, if you have the extra $200 in your lineup to go with Cooper Kupp over Robert Woods, it's pretty enticing to go with him just because on average this season he's been targeted just a little bit more, so I might lean towards Cooper Kupp if you got the money for him. But overall, 1v1, I would take Woods on a point per dollar basis. And these guys, like I mentioned earlier, I say it pretty much every single week I want to talk about these guys, but they're kind of the same exact play. The target shares are pretty similar. The yards per game are similar. The targets, the weight opportunity shares, the ADOTs are both around 7. So very similar plays here, although I would say Jared Goff probably likes Cooper Kupp a little bit more. But I think this game can certainly pop off here. It's got the projected fastest pace of play game on average. Both teams are playing at a decently fast pace. The Rams are at 27.5 seconds per play. Meanwhile, the Arizona Cardinals are really high up there, around 25 seconds per play. And if you just take those two and average them together, it should be the fastest pace game on the slate. We're also at a 48.5 point over-under, which I honestly feel like is a bit too low. I could see this game going over 50 because both these teams can certainly move the football. Now, the Rams defense is pretty solid, so maybe Kyler Murray struggles a little bit in that aspect, but the Cardinals defense, while not awful, they're not the greatest either, so I could definitely see the Rams having a pretty good day on offense. So I definitely want pieces to this passing game. I also think Jared Goff's a pretty nice play, only $1,500 in tournaments to pair with Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods or even both. Let's get into the numbers a little bit. So Cooper Kupp, like I mentioned earlier, he's slightly targeted a little bit more. He's at around a 25% target share. Meanwhile, Robert Woods is at 22.5%. Woods is seeing a little bit over 7 targets per game. Meanwhile, Cooper Kupp's at a little bit over 8 targets per game. Both have weight opportunity shares around 50-55%. And both have ADOTs at 7 and 7.5. So very similar plays here. Like I mentioned earlier, though, Robert Woods is a little bit cheaper, so I'm going to side with him. But the Cardinals have not been that great versus wide receivers this season. They're 22nd versus the position, allowing over 40 DraftKings points per game and around 170 receiving yards per game as well. So both these guys can certainly have good days. If you want to play both, if you can't decide between the two, I think that could work out as well. I remember I forget what primetime game it was, but it wasn't that long ago. I think it was versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where both these guys had absolutely fantastic days. I think both of them had around 30 DraftKings points. Not saying that's going to happen again, but both these guys can certainly have strong days, and they're pretty cheap for the most part. So Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, like them a ton on this slate. And my fifth and final core play, it's a tight end, but he's absolutely free. But it's Anthony FIRKSER here at $2,500. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but it's only $2,500, so it's not going to sink your lineup. He's probably going to let you fit in guys like Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, and Devontae Adams this week, so you really can't ask for too much here. But this is just mainly due to Jonnu Smith being out, which means that's going to open up 75% of the snaps on this offense, because last week Jonnu Smith played on 75% of the snaps. The other tight end was involved as well, and Anthony FIRKSER actually saw the least amount of snaps, but he should be expected to be the main pass-catching tight end in this offense, and this is definitely a game I like for fantasy purposes. It might actually be the most exciting game of the week as well. We have the highest point total of 53.5 for this game, and the Tennessee Titans have one of the higher implied team totals as well, as they're sitting close to 30 actually as of right now. 29.5 to be exact. They're 5.5 point favorites at home. The Titans also play at a pretty fast pace as well. And the thing is, FIRKSER's actually been involved in the offense this season. It's not like this is just the first time he's actually going to get some playing time. He's actually averaging about 3.5 targets per game. Now, he's not really doing too much, only a 12% target share, but 25 receiving yards and a little bit over 2.5 catches per game. But he's shown big game upside. We saw, I forget, it was like week 5 or week 6 versus Houston. He had double-digit targets, had over 100 yards, got into the end zone, had around 30 Draftkings points. Not saying that's going to be the case in this one, but there's certainly upside for it. Has 11% market share of the team's air yards this season, a 26% weight opportunity share, and it's a really good matchup versus Cleveland. They've been one of the worst teams in the league versus tight ends, allowing the 4th most points per game, 15.7 points. They're also 23rd DV versus the pass, and close to a receiving touchdown per game as well. So Anthony FIRKSER, we don't need much. If he gets 5 points, I think we can call it a win after Darren Waller got us all at 6 points last week. So FIRKSER, there's not much downside here. If he catches a couple of balls, he should be able to pay off his $2,500 price tag. And if he gets into the end zone, you don't have him in cash games, you're probably going to be drawing dead there unless your other tight end happens to have an absolute monster game. But FIRKSER, $2,500 to let you fit in Cook and all those other guys I mentioned earlier. So there's not much downside here, and I feel pretty good about it in the tight end spot. And with that being said, guys, that's going to be it for this video, so I do appreciate each and every single one of you guys watching. And if you didn't already, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel. You can follow me over on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. I'm CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want to support the channel over on Patreon, it's still early in the month, so it's still around the best time to do so. You get access into the entire NFL DFS data sheet, which has a ton of useful information. And it's what I use to make these videos, and it's what I use to build lineups each and every single week. So if you want to check that out, I preview it in my final thoughts video. So if you want to take a look at it, it'll be there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think that's all I got to say. So I'll see you guys in the next one. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week 13 of the NFL season.